Man, what a win. What a feel-good game for the fighting Texas Aggies. Not only did they break the road streak, they did it in dominant fashion. And I would argue that they established an identity just like they did against the same Florida Gators in the 2020 season. It's like I said leading into the game. After a Week 1 performance versus Notre Dame that also happened to be the first outing under an entirely new staff and a subsequent follow-up versus an FCS opponent, I felt like we really had no idea who Texas A&M was. We felt like we might have an idea that you might have a strong running game. The defense had some good players, some exciting plays and moments, but was struggling with the run and hadn't forced a sack on the year just yet. Was the team doomed to have a lifeless offense, no passing game, play sloppy football in the critical moments of the game like they did versus Notre Dame? Was this defense doomed to underperform? And while I never really bought into either of those ideas entirely, we acknowledged the fact that the Florida game would tell all. It would either stamp in those troubles or set us off in the right direction, or God forbid, it would leave us still wondering. We knew this game was a litmus test, would tell us where we were going, at least in the early portion of the year, and largely set the stage for the season outcome. Because you lose this game, you run the risk of a mediocre year one under Mike Elko. You lose to Florida, what would that say about South Carolina on the road? Auburn on the road? Arkansas? We hope they would at least win and live to fight another day, maybe even ugly, particularly with a surprise injury report that included Connor Wigman, Tyreek Chappelle, and Trey Jones. Win and feel good about your performance, and all of a sudden those manageable opponents I just mentioned remain manageable, and you avoid those super stressful, pressure-packed situations that they would have became if you lost to Florida. Well, Aggies, they did just that, and then some. They left no doubt. They imposed their will. They overcame adversity with penalty-ridden drives, lightning delay, answering the first drive of the second half score by Florida emphatically with 2 straight touchdowns. With your backup quarterback, they found an identity, stopped the run, turned the ball over, and beat the ever-living, ever-loving, compound, complex hell out of the Florida Gators. In a game that was really over in the third quarter and not even as close as the fairly comfortable score indicated. Well, today, guys, I want to talk about what was so great about that game, both in terms of X's and O's and kind of what that means for the next portion of the schedule and what A&M's chances of a super overachieving successful season just might be. We'll talk about personnel, team trends, strengths, and of course weaknesses, and we'll have to address what might happen in the quarterback room going forward, of course, after a major update from Mike Elko on Monday. So guys, thanks for being here. Make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me greatly. Apparently, over half the viewer base is not subscribed, so if you could just double check and make sure you're subbed, that would help me greatly. You might not realize it, but a lot of you guys aren't subscribed. I really appreciate you guys being here. If you could just click that button, that would help me so much. But thank you guys for being here. Let's start with some of these major takeaways from the game. And I think the story starts somewhere else, somewhere very specific, rather someone very specific. How about a huge Texas Aggie round of applause for Texas A&M offensive line coach Adam Cushing. For 4 straight seasons, we went into a Texas A&M football season with questions about the Aggie offensive line. Oh, the team looks pretty good, but it's all going to come down to offensive line play. If the offensive line plays well, we'll have a good year. Only for it to indeed bite us in the butt for 3 straight seasons. Adam Cushing comes in once again with similar questions, only for Adam Cushing to say, "Not so fast, my friend. I got this. I got these guys who for 3 straight years underperformed, fell short, regressed, and flat out suffered." Let me tell you what I love about Adam Cushing. He's not Steve Adazio, and I jest about that, but he's very much contrasting in style to what Adazio was before, and you needed a change. Adazio is a blue-collared, hardcore, yelling, disciplinary style, which can work, but simply was not working at Texas A&M. To contrast that, Cushing brought in a much more tactical, even-keeled, detailed, eye-to-eye approach with the offensive line. He's a coach that sweats the details and has had over a dozen all-conference players in the last 5 years or so. He was a younger, up-and-coming position coach on a hot streak, and Elko and A&M took full advantage by adding him to the program, and boy, has it paid off. Before this game, we figured we'd be a run-heavy, run-first kind of a team, especially with new OC Colin Klein and his history as a play caller. But that would obviously only thrive with an excelling offensive line. And we sensed from what we saw in spurts versus Notre Dame and against lesser opposition in McNeese that this could be a strong running attack. And after a 300-yard running game a time of possession dominating game in the swamp, this absolutely is a strong, impactful running a game led by a quality offensive line and a good running back stable. The offensive line absolutely dominated the game. And look, we know it was Florida, but you did exactly what elite teams do to inferior opposition with talent, and that's dominate when you're supposed to. And additionally, for all the problems I thought Florida had, they did have a big physical defensive line that was clogging rushing lanes. Didn't matter for this Adam Cushing coached offensive line. From left to right, every player did their part to control the game on the ground. And that's with your third string center, because you're down Naboo, then Fowey didn't skip a beat. You dropped Fowey this game. He's out, and it's a nagging injury. He'll be back soon. But then Shanahan didn't skip a beat. Where over the last 3 years, it seemed like whoever you threw out onto the offensive line couldn't perform. Now it seems like whoever you do throw out does perform. And that is a trademark of just a well-coached position group. Absolute tip of the hat to Adam Cushing. He's got these boys ready to work, and work they have indeed. This team has an identity right now, and Elko spoke about this today, that is built from the trenches out. He's spoken to this offensive line. He wants them to be the identity of the team, and they have done that so far this season, and that definitely showed on Saturday. Because as well as you ran the ball, you stuffed the run on defense too. The defensive line finally was able to showcase their talent to the fullest. Regis and Turner seemed to impact more on the interior than we've seen from them all year. And I'm going to go ahead and say that Shamar Stewart had his most impactful game as an Aggie, and he won the Defensive Line Player of the Week from that internal weekly award system that the team has going on right now. He consistently won his matchup, made a mess of play after play, and off the bench you have Rylan Kennedy, who continues to make an impact as a defensive end, and he was actually the highest PFF graded player on the team in 13 snaps. What a weapon off the bench. Cassius Howell off the bench as well. Recorded his first sack of the year and continues to be an absolute weapon in his role. I also think Damian Sanford excelled in his second start at linebacker. We saw him start for the first time versus McNeese, only to start this week again, even though Scooby Williams was healthy enough to play, and he played a bit. And we saw a little bit of a shuffle at the linebacker position with Sanford as the will, with the most amount of reps, Torian as your down-and-down middle linebacker, played almost the entire game, and Scooby coming off of injury as that third man in the rotation. But on third downs, they're bringing in Solomon DeShields, who has proven to be an effective kind of a drop/rush defensive end / hybrid linebacker role, and he's doing really well on third downs, finally kind of settling into your groove at linebacker. I thought they looked a lot better versus a dangerous running back in Montrell Johnson, who had over 100 yards versus Miami. You know how many yards this defense held him to? -7. That was a guy who ran for over 100 versus Miami, and you held him to -7 on the afternoon. The narrative that this defense was flat out bad at stopping the run was grounded to a screeching halt on Saturday. Massive improvement here in Game 3, along with the offense. And continuing with the positive trends in Game 3, positive trend in the quarterback play. And I want to be fair to Connor Wigman. He had a bad Game 1 versus Notre Dame, but that was against an elite secondary. First game back, and now we've learned that he may have played a portion of that game with an injured shoulder. Versus Florida, we saw backup Marcel Reed control the game. Very effective operator of the offense, which might have been the most impressive feat for a first-game starter on the road, was that he just got the offense in and out of place so effectively. He completed timely and clutch passes. He uses legs as a lethal weapon. And if we're going to somewhat excuse Connor for what happened in Week 1 with that elite secondary and everything he had going on, we'd be remiss not to mention this Florida secondary is really struggling, and that Reed was fully able to take advantage of that. But having said that, he was still so impressive. So now, A&M finds themselves in somewhat of a quarterback controversy, but like kind of a good problem to have, right? You have two quarterbacks who you think could probably get it done for you as long as Connor is healthy and at his best. What do they do when Connor is healthy? Do they throw him back in the game and give him a chance to improve? Or do they ride the hot hand? What a great problem to have. Two viable options. And if it's up to me, I think you give Connor a game to rest at least. I think you see if Reed can build upon that performance versus Bowling Green. And I'm of the mindset, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If he goes out there and he builds on what he did last week, you got to play him. And he looked really, really good, guys. And he added another dimension to this offense that really calls for as many explosive weapons right now as possible, because your receivers aren't really striking fear into the hearts of defenses. Now, if your receivers are absolutely terrorizing defenses, they're burning man defenders, having huge explosive catch and runs, winning 50-50 balls, I think Connor's your man, and maybe he still is. But I really think, given where the receiver room is at, having that explosive threat at quarterback can be very beneficial to an offense that just doesn't have that right now. He adds an element that has to be accounted for. It could potentially give a numbers advantage to your receiver core that's kind of working through some things. Now, that's if Marcel Reed is indeed constantly the Marcel Reed we got versus Florida. So that's why I say you approach the next couple of games with an open mind. You let things play out. But here's one wrinkle to that equation, though, that we learned on Monday. Elko said that because Connor's shoulder injury didn't progress how they expected or hoped, that he has to go back in for additional tests and imaging. So we're not really sure where Connor Wigman stands right now. And as of right now, he's listed as day-to-day / week-to-week according to Elko. We'll have to see what happens with Connor Wigman. But overall, where this running game is trending, where this offensive line is trending, I think you can find success with either option, as long as the Connor side of that equation is indeed a 100% Connor Wigman. We shall see what happens there. But what a performance by Marcel Reed. All in all, we got definitive answers for every single one of our areas of concern. The offense improved. The offensive line progressed. The defensive front and entire defense stopped the run. But that doesn't mean it's all sunshine and rainbows. You still had some areas of concern coming out of the game. You had 13 penalties on the game. I want to go through each one real quick. You had a false start to start the game between the center and quarterback exchange. You had holding by Crownover, block in the back by Theo Mellon-Orstrom, running into the kicker by Ja'Day Walker, an illegal shift by a late aligning Cyrus Allen while Daniels was in motion, something that's plagued us each game so far, receivers getting aligned. False start by Chase Basantis holding, TJ Shanahan unnecessary roughness, which I kind of liked. Face mask by Damian Sanford. Offsides by Howell and Turner. Pass interference by Des Ricks. Targeting by Dalton Brooks. And a kick out of bounds. Your defense was also susceptible to play action. And that was the most successful attack to this team overall on Saturday, was the play action pass. And you didn't finish strong on defense or special teams. And I would argue a little bit of complacency set in at the end of that game on the defensive side of the ball. They also went into a bit of a prevent defense in the last few drives of the game. A 3-man front with a 3-man rush that I'm not particularly a huge fan of. However, I understand why they did it. They were dominating the game in every facet, and the prevent defense allows for more clock to run off while you kind of limit the big plays and force them to kind of, dink and dunk down the field and with short completions. They were able to wipe off more time that way than getting aggressive and giving up big, fast plays. But you can't be complacent. You got to clean that all up. But really, it's kind of a positive in a way. You were able to go out and largely dominate, play your brand of football, yet you were not perfect. There is so much to go through in this film room and in practice over the next couple of weeks. They have to improve here because the games don't get any easier. Yes, you have a couple of manageable ones in Bowling Green and Arkansas that will still test you and can get you if you're not ready. But then you have the ultimate test versus Missouri. We'll talk about all that in just a second. You have stuff to clean up, and you get to do that after a win. Now, the complacency aspect cannot seep into practice. You have areas to clean up, so you better attack those to the fullest. But that's where I trust Elko and this staff. Like I said going into this game, I don't think Elko and this staff was going to let this team not be ready for a game. I think if anything is going to stop A&M this year, it's just going to be falling short where you're weak. Whether that was going to be a bad run defense, issues in the receiver room, whatever that is, you can live with that. I don't see this team beating itself, but that has to be hammered out in practice, and I think they'll be able to do that. Overall, I think my favorite part of the afternoon versus Florida was just camaraderie and togetherness that the team showed. Whether it was celebrating together after scores, players dancing for their team and teammates after big plays, sideline cheering and celebrating. And I'm talking about, Bryce Anderson returns the pick six. The whole team is down there dancing. They're all doing their individual touchdown dances. They are together. And that's one of the beauties about road opportunities is when you're on the road, you're kind of on a raft. You have nothing around you but ocean. In this case, the ocean is the away environment. Away fans, away team, away buildings, unfamiliar environment. You only have each other. And I really felt like this team leaned on each other and played together this weekend. celebrated together. They trash talked together. The trash talking was on another level versus Florida. They were trash talking the Florida fans, the Florida players, the Florida recruits. You got to move the recruits, man. The Florida recruits are right there at the end zone, so whenever something happens, the A&M players are right there like chopping it up with the recruits saying, oh, man, you're at the wrong place right now, buddy. Come to Texas A&M. It was just awesome to see the team come together on a road trip. They really took advantage of that opportunity. I think the bond really strengthened at the Swamp. So what does that all mean? What is the opportunity at hand now that you took care of business in emphatic fashion on the road? This team has done nothing but improve game to game in the short season. From Notre Dame to McNeese to Florida. They've gotten better and better and better. But that is a short sample size. You have a massive opportunity to continue to improve over the next 3 games of the schedule leading into Mizzou and your bye week. And the great thing is you were able to win emphatically, find an identity, and dominate, but it was nowhere near that perfect game we were talking about. They got to hit the film room, the practice, with a manageable home game versus Bowling Green. Not an easy home game versus a G5 school. A team that will test them, a team they have to be at their best for, and a team you're hoping they're not looking past. And that's where I say I think I trust Mike Elko in that front. Another manageable SEC game. Neutral environment, Jerry World, Arkansas. Another challenge that they can't let up for. Can you improve going into that one as well? And in the first half of the season, will culminate with the home game versus Mizzou. A game that they will have to have corrected some blunders for. A game that will absolutely require their best. But if they're able to improve, like they have so far in the season, that trend can continue to go up, I don't see why they can't finish this half of the season strong. That's 3 winnable, non-away tests that can set A&M up for massive success in the second half of the season. That's what week-to-week improvement can do for you guys. They continue to do it, and they can blow the lid off of expectations of Mike Elko's Year 1 Aggies. There's a massive opportunity at hands, folks, and it's so, so exciting, but they got to do it. So, guys, what are your biggest takeaways from the game, and what do you expect out of A&M over the next 3 games? I want to hear from you, so make sure you comment how you're feeling at this transition point into the next 3 games. All of a sudden, we went from restless and kind of nervous and wondering what's going to happen next to rejuvenated, excited, and extremely hopeful about what's to come. Time to take advantage. So, guys, check out my Monday night show. That's going to be probably dropped by the time you're watching this, if you're watching this right now. We're going to actually rewatch the Florida game and kind of zoom in on some really key plays there and kind of look at personnel and look what's going on. Check that out. And then Thursday night, we'll have another live show where you guys have a chance to call in and let me know what you're wanting to see improvement-wise or game-wise versus Bowling Green, how you're feeling. Tune in for those 2 shows. Guys, thanks so much for watching. It's really feeling good to make videos again after an Aggie win and an Aggie win on the road. It feels so, so good. It's been a long couple of years covering this team. I've not covered a single road win. This was my first one, and it felt so good, baby. So, guys, be sure to like. Make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you guys in the next show. Thanks. Gig 'em.